Afternoon, everyone, and happy Pride. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Carolyn Weisinger. I'm the president of the board of directors of San Francisco Pride.
Hi, and my name is Claire Farley, and we're so happy to have you here with us today to celebrate Pride at Home, the official LGBTQ Pride Month kickoff. You just heard from Brianna Sinclair, San Francisco's very own world renowned opera singer. She is such an inspiration. Thank you so much, Brianna, for joining us and for your performance.
Oh, yeah, she was so incredible. And we also have great performances today by the Gay Men's Chorus and the Lesbian, Gay, and Freedom Band. But Claire, did you know that we are streaming? We're here in San Francisco, but we're streaming live around the world. So we have viewers from everywhere. We hope that you will share with us how you are honoring Pride this year. Please post that you're watching by sharing the hashtag Pride at Home and LGBTQ Pride Month.
We also want to thank our co-hosts for partnering with us on this special event. Mayor London Breed, San Francisco Pride, Manny's, the Office of Transgender Initiatives, SF Queer Nightlife Fund, and the SF Bay Area LGBT Coalition. We know that San Francisco is home for the largest Pride celebration in the country, and in June is always a time to come together and honor our history and celebrate Pride in ourselves and our community, including Trans March, the Pink Triangle, which will be lit up this year with LED lights, and so many more events. So we encourage you to visit sfpride.org to learn about all the events happening this June.
Right. And as the president of the board of San Francisco Pride, I know how important it is that we celebrate Pride and that we are actually here in a milestone this year. This is our 50th anniversary. So even in pandemic, we're making sure that we're honoring the history of this organization and what we both celebrate and fight for in our community. And in this particular moment, we're really focusing on making sure that we're centering the voices of Black LGBTQ folks. We know that there's a lot of unrest that is going on in our community, but one thing that we want to remind folks is that our LGBTQ community members face some of the most harshest criticism, scrutiny, and violence of anyone in our community. This is a time that we need to come together and demand that much needed change. This is where we have to come together and support each other. But in this event and for our organization right now, it is important for us that we are amplifying our Black LGBTQ voices. This is an opportunity to look at our deep history of resilience, those that paved the way for us, and take action.
Yeah, thank you, Carolyn, for that. I totally agree. This is really a time for us to further the work of our ancestors and our transcestors. And although this celebration this year will look different, we're all still coming together to share our pride at home, sharing our love and support for each other. We're all doing our part to stop the spread of COVID-19 and make sure that our healthcare workers and our essential workers are safe and healthy. Later in the program, we'll also have a special panel discussion on the SF Bay Area LGBT COVID relief effort. So we hope you'll get involved.
We also have a very, very important discussion about queer and trans with queer and trans Black leaders on the current moment that we are in and how communities are showing up to address our country's long history of racism and violence against Black bodies. But Claire, I am excited to bring our special co-host who may even love Pride more than me. I doubt that, but she may. She is the first Black woman mayor of San Francisco and who continues to show up for our community. Furthermore, she continues to have San Francisco lead the country in responding to COVID-19. As we know, Black and Brown communities are most impacted by COVID-19. This is especially true for our trans and queer communities, our seniors, and adults with disabilities.
Yeah, we're so excited to have Mayor Breed with us and for her work with Give to SF, which has committed a contribution of over $75K to support LGBT food relief. And furthermore, those dollars will be critical to support the community through this pandemic. Also, I'm so grateful to work with her every day to support the incredible initiatives to support our trans community, from housing to rental assistance to our LGBT senior services, and support our local organization, our arts, and working to fight for LGBTQ rights across the country. Welcome, Mayor Breed. We're so honored to have you join with us today. For us, I know that for us that my work is really focused as the director of the Transgender Initiatives, working firsthand to fight discrimination both in San Francisco as well as across the country. One of the bills that we worked on recently was the attack on healthcare and the access to healthcare. So for us, we really see this as an opportunity to encourage and welcome, such a fierce ally. And I had the chance to march with her during Pride last year, and it was such a fun float. Carolyn, don't you think?
The mayor always has amazing floats, so I'm sad we won't get to see what float that she has this year, but I am happy to welcome Mayor Breed to the program. Welcome, Mayor Breed.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me here today. And Carolyn, I don't know, we may have to battle over who enjoys Pride the most.
I'm ready to
and I got to tell you. But I will say that I'm so happy to be here with you all. It has been a really challenging time in our city and our country, especially many of us as African Americans who sadly have had to live with this hurt and this pain for so long. And I know that especially African Americans who are part of our transgender community has had it really worse than so many other people as it relates to discrimination, housing, and a number of other issues. And I will say that the ability to come together with all of you to celebrate Pride, but to also call attention to the injustices that exist in our society, it means a lot, because this community has really been leaders in fighting for rights for so many people, not just folks who are part of the LGBT community. But when we continue to go out there and advocate and push for reforms, you're standing right by our side. So, Carolyn, I'm so excited about your leadership with Pride. It is so needed at this time more than ever. And I'm so grateful that Claire is a part of my administration and pushing the transgender initiatives. And San Francisco has been a leader on these initiatives. And it does have everything to do with Claire working with the community to advocate for the resources that are needed. And so as we celebrate Pride, it's a little different this year. I know you all are feeling it. It's not just because of COVID-19 and the fact that we can't get together. And I actually had a new outfit, so I'm so mad. I'm going to have to wear it on one of these calls because I've been waiting for this for the longest. But it's not that we can't just get together and celebrate and be around each other and feel the positive vibes and energy. It's also a lot of what's happening in the country. And it goes back to when I think about San Francisco and its history and my own personal history with Pride. My first Pride parade, in fact, was when I was in high school. And I remember watching Pride. It was in front of, you guys remember Woolworth was actually where the Gap is. And so I was watching the parade and I was so inspired and so excited. I never felt so good about how the energy in the air and the fun and the excitement and the celebration, it just made me so happy. It made me feel so good. And that's what I always felt Pride was about. It always brings people together to support and uplift one another, even though we know that the LGBT community continues to get disrespected and discriminated against, even with the person, sadly, who is occupying the White House. It is a disgrace. And it means that as far as we've come with having the first office of transgender initiatives and all the things we continue to push for in San Francisco, we have such a long way to go. And I want to say to all of you, thank you so much for your courage. Thank you all for continuing to speak out and to fight for your ability to just be who you are, to love who you want to love, and to do anything that you deserve to be able to do in life. We have, as you know, here in our country, a really horrible history around discrimination. If someone is not of a certain look, of a certain race, of a certain attitude, oftentimes they encounter discrimination in ways that people who never have to encounter that can never really fully understand. They can empathize, but you can never understand that people who are African American, those who are targeted because they're transgender and attacked physically because of who they are, it is so tough. And so I think what I appreciate about now is there are others who may not completely understand it, but they empathize and they want to be a part of pushing for change. And I've never seen it to this capacity before. And I know what I was also excited about is the fact that Pride was the committee said, you know what, we can't celebrate together. We can't come together in the same way, but we're still going to celebrate. And we are still going to appreciate that this event has been around for 50 years, calling attention to the need for the push for equality, the continued push for equality. And so we're not going to just sit silently by and wait for something to happen. We are going to do something about it. We're going to be a part of the solution. We are going to lift our voices in solidarity to the injustices that we know have plagued our city and our country for far too long. So this is why I'm so excited about what Pride will represent this year. A celebration of hope, a celebration of optimism for a better future, because I can't even imagine what it feels like to travel somewhere in the country and be basically turned away because of who you are or who you love. And the reason why I fight so hard for what we need to do to change things is because I want San Francisco to continue to be the model, continue to push forward the kinds of policies that are going to correct the systemic racism that has plagued us for far too long. We are in this together. We are better when we support each other, when we have one another's back, when we lift each other up. We are better. No more excuses, no more pointing the fingers and telling everyone what they need to do. We have to do it. We have to roll up our sleeves and do what's necessary in order to move things forward. I want to say to the Pride Committee, thank you for your work and your advocacy and all you continue to do, despite, I know, the criticism and the disrespect that you get with the work that you are trying to do in order to support the community. I want to say thank you for hanging in there and doing everything you can to make Pride a success in San Francisco. I want to really appreciate and thank the Office of Transgender Initiatives for continuing to push the envelope. So many of the folks and the advocates out there and the investments we've made, we know it's making a difference. And I want to congratulate the Grand Marshals, the people who are going to represent at this year's Pride Parade, which might be a virtual or a protest. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but the fact is we're going to lift up our voices and make sure we are heard. So I just want to again appreciate and thank you all so much for everything that you do to really uplift the LGBT community. I will always be right there with you, right by your side, pushing what we need to push in order to get the job done. Thank you all and happy Pride.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bree. It's such an honor. And I know that you had a special proclamation for today for Carolyn.
Yes. See, that's why I love Claire. I do have a special proclamation that I want to present to Carolyn Weisinger on the work and the commitment and the resources and all that you continue to do. I think, are you able to pull that proclamation up, Claire?
Yeah, it's on the screen.
Oh, it's on the screen? Okay, great. So what we are going to do is declare it Pride Month in the city and county of San Francisco. Let the festivities and the advocacy begin.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor Bree. On behalf of the SF Pride Board, I want to thank you for always being a great ally, always being a good community partner, always standing there in the gap and ready to work with us whenever we need your help, Claire's help, anyone else in your office. I want to thank you for proclaiming Pride Month and being a great advocate for the community.
Thank you. And I can't wait to hear Brianna sing.
Oh, yes. She's an amazing voice. And now we're going to kick it off to the official band of San Francisco, the Gay and Lesbian Freedom Band.
Thank you. So now we're going to go on to our incredible panelists who are doing so much vital work in the community. And Mayor Breed, I know you have to go and continue to save us from the Rona, but I did want to get in one question with you, with our panel today. And I think for us to check in with each other, for Black folks in this moment, in this nexus of both pandemic and, demonstration of racial injustice, is really important to check in with how we're feeling and how we're coping. So Mayor Breed, what is one thing that gives you hope and one thing that is giving you joy in this moment?
I think that what's giving me hope is that there are people who are not African Americans who are fighting for change like never before. Now, I want to just also say something about that. Part of it is we appreciate folks who are allies. But what I want to caution people against is check your privilege, because it's not about you. It's about what African Americans have had to deal with for our entire lives. And so be careful about how you come at Black people right now, because we appreciate the support. We are grateful because we are all in this together and we want people to be there right with us. But the reason why I say this is because this whole thing and what's been happening in San Francisco, while I appreciate the protest, it makes me very uncomfortable when non-Black people try to tell me what to do for Black people. It's offensive. So just look, I'm mayor, call me out, protest, do whatever, but be very careful about how you talk to me when it comes to the people that I've worked for and lived with my entire life. It gives me hope that so many people are finally woke and paying attention and care about racial injustice like never before, especially if you are someone who unfortunately has experienced it your entire life. This is an opportunity for us to change. But make sure you remember, it's not about you. It's about all of us, and it's about real change. So let's get rid of the negativity. Let's focus on what we are going to be able to change and how we're going to make a difference, how we are going to come together like never before. That's what gives me hope. And watching the new generation step up and be advocates and push and fight because they want a better future. That's who we're doing this for. And we will go through this very, very difficult time. And what my hope is that a blessing will emerge from it, that we will emerge stronger, better, more resilient than ever, and rid our country, our city of this racism, transphobia, of all of these things that have torn us apart for far too long. We will have an opportunity now to rid our country of this once and for all. This is our moment.
All right, Mayor Breed, I'm used to having to steer you towards these one sentence answers. One thing that gives you joy in this moment.
Well, it gives me joy that I see so many people out there really genuinely hurt and upset and willing to help fight. And I hope that they are consistently in this for the long haul. And it gives me hope that people are finally paying attention and there could be change. I mean, think about it. In the past with George Floyd, people have said, elected officials, even police officers have said the murder of George Floyd. Do you think that would have happened before? Because that's what it was. And folks are finally calling it out for what it is. And what gives me hope is that people are changing. People are changing. They're changing their hearts. They see George Floyd in that moment where he cried out for his mother. Everybody in the Black community know that mama, the way he called out for his mom is, if I'm in trouble, that's how I'm going to call out for my grandmother, who I call mama. When I was in trouble, mama, you call that call. And I know his mom isn't alive, but everyone knows that call. And when you think about it, you start to look at him like your son, like your brother. And everyone in this country know that if he was white, that would have never happened. And that's the problem. And it gives me hope that people are finally woke on this issue.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mayor Breed, again, for always being a great community advocate and ally. I know you have to go, but we thank you again for joining us here today.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for your work and your advocacy.
All right. Let's go on to our next panelist, Imani. Imani is the new executive director of the National Center of Lesbian Rights. I'm so excited to finally meet you. You know, Black folks, we meet people before we meet them because somebody's auntie or somebody knew them. So that's me and Imani. Hey, Miss Elise in Harlem. So Imani, what's one thing that's giving you joy and one thing that's giving you hope?
Ah, my goodness. I would say things give me joy and give me hope. I'm not sure if you can hear right now, but I live in Oakland, and right now I'm listening to car horns. And I think that it's beautiful right now that folks every day we're hearing that there are folks out here doing something, and that's given me a great deal of hope and a great deal of joy. I'm also really proud of looking at what our community is doing, because we have an opportunity to change something. Black folks have contributed a great deal to this country, and we haven't always been able to benefit from it. And we are finding ways to make that happen. And that gives me a lot of pride, a lot of joy, and a lot of hope. I'm thrilled to be part of this movement and to be one of us.
Thank you. And next we have Taquan Harrison. Taquan is a member of the San Francisco Human Rights Commission. Taquan, I love your blazer. What's one thing that's giving you hope and one thing that's giving you joy?
Everyone, smelling all the flowers.
Okay.
Breathing and taking care of myself, and reveling in it all, celebrating pride and the legacy of our ancestors. Ashe. So one thing that's giving me hope right now is the coalition building work that I've been able to lead and also be a part of, specifically with our Black trans organizations in San Francisco and Black gender nonconforming organizations, as well as the greater Bay Area larger coalition building work that the Office of Transgender Initiative has been leading here in San Francisco. So that's been an excellent opportunity. And what's been giving me joy is our youth, our young folks who are putting so much energy and fierceness out into the world, our young queer folks of color, our young trans folks of color who I've have the pleasure to work with through my fellowship at the HRC. I feel like they're the ones who are giving us hope and inspiration of how to really, challenge anti-Blackness, challenge oppression. I think that there's been a lot of intergenerational dialogue and support between community that has been great. So those are all the things that are kind of keeping me sane and hopeful during these challenging times as a Black queer man. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Aria. Aria is the amazing executive director of the Transgender Cultural District here in San Francisco. Hey, Aria, what is something that's giving you hope and something that's giving you joy?
Hi, thank you for having me. One thing that is giving me joy at the moment is seeing people support the leadership of Black trans women. In particular now, and I've been getting tweeted from different celebrities and tastemakers and influencers and different media sort of covering our work. And I think for those of us who have been Black before it was popular, LOL, and have been outspoken about the leadership of Black people. It is amazing to see that cultural shift. And I think it gives me hope that more of our efforts, specifically with queer and trans community, will be 3 times more effective because now Black people will be in it.
Okay, thank you so much. And I just, like I said, wanted to check in with the wellness because I think right now in this moment, wellness for Black folks is so very important. And I mentioned a little bit earlier about the nexus, where we are right here in this moment, right between pandemic and basically an explosion in I say feelings in regards to, racial injustice. And I think one thing that has kind of triggered me just a little bit is, I'm a person who's 41 years old. I've lived through so many different murders, through the beating of Rodney King, through so many people who haven't received justice, and to kind of see people who are just now waking up to it. I mean, I'm thankful to start seeing more allies on the front lines, but it does trigger you just a little bit. My question is, how does this moment affect you as an LGBTQ community leader? Specifically, you see people, non-Black folks, who are saying, we shouldn't celebrate Pride. This should be all about Black bodies. And we're like, first of all, Black queer people are real. And, Pride started as a defense of Black bodies. We've seen the whitewashing essentially of Pride. How does it affect you as a Black community leader? What are the connections or the differences that you see between violence against Black people and other communities of color and trans and LGBTQ folks? And I'm going to start back with Aria. What are some of the differences and connections that you're seeing, and how is it affecting you as a leader?
I think, if I'm to be quite honest, Pride has not always included us. And I don't mean the institution of Pride, I mean sort of the annual, once a year, everybody comes together and they wear their rainbow colored outfits and celebrate and get drunk and, and party and celebrate their freedom. That opportunity has not been, Black trans people have not been liberated in this country and around the world. And so I think for me, we're, as a Black trans woman leader, I'm experiencing more hope than I ever have because people are highlighting our experience and specifically showing how not only do we face murder by the state, as all Black people do, but we also experience murder from other Black people. And then we also experience incidents of violence and systemic oppression and institutional violence. And so I think for me, I'm carrying that weight, but I see a light at the end of the tunnel for us to finally be liberated as people are actually talking not just about our pronouns, but evolving that conversation and moving past what is trans and, you know, sex assigned at birth and pronouns and moving to something a bit more radical and inclusive of trans people.
Okay. And same question to you, Imani. I know NCLR, you all's work is a little bit more on the legal battle, but at the same time, you all do a lot to support creating policy or upholding policy for LGBTQ folks. And of course, I'm sure it's a little bit different to be the Black leader of such an organization. So what are some of the connections or differences that you're seeing in your work?
Sure. So we see how at every turn, Black people and people of color, LGBTQ people, are disproportionately and negatively impacted. We're seeing that because we are in a global pandemic, and we're seeing that play out there. But I also thought that was a really important part of the question. Ari did a wonderful job of talking about it. You know, when we talk about Pride and we talk about canceling Pride, there's some ownership there that I actually think that we really need to reevaluate. You know, like Pride was started by Black trans women. Like this is a movement that we shouldn't be saying that there isn't, you know, we can cancel Pride now to concentrate on racial justice when some of us, every way that we can celebrate Pride is concentrating on racial justice. And so even that question, even that phrase is showing just how we lack an intersectional analysis in the ways that we celebrate Pride that was started by Black and brown trans women. And so I think that's something that we need to consider when we're thinking about how we can be more intersectional. And this is, I think I'm happy that the conversation is happening because you know, we're going to get better when we get better. And the more people that are part of this conversation, the better. I think that it can be a bit triggering for folks that are always aware of this dynamic. But I think that now is a time to think about, you know, while this is going on, we are also in the midst of a global pandemic. And who are the people that we are treating like essential? And how are we treating them as essential? You know, are we putting them in the line of fire, or are we actually taking care of folks? You know, I think the fact that this is happening during Pride Month or Pride season, there are a lot of ways that we can look at this and look at how disproportionately the most underrepresented folks are being treated during this time. We're seeing how we know that in a time that we're looking at violence by the state, that people of color and queer and trans people are disproportionately likely to be harmed and to be killed, to be murdered, and there wouldn't be any justice for that. And so an intersectional analysis is incredibly important during this time. And thinking about having that during Pride is, I mean, this is the time to do it. This is what Pride should be.
Okay. And Taquan, I know I've been a human rights commissioner in the city of Richmond before. I know sometimes people are like, well, what do you guys do? So what are some of the things that you're seeing that may be different or maybe affecting your work, or maybe some things that the commission would be proposing or working on in regards to Black LGBTQ communities in this time?
Okay. Hello, everyone. First off, I want to just start off by saying that if the movement isn't intersectional, I don't want to be a part of it. All of our movement building and work needs to be intersectional and centering Black folks. And HRC has always been the leader, has always been the champion. I don't think that people really pay attention to our work. HRC funds $1.5 million to trans-led organization, Black trans-led organization, Latinx organization in San Francisco. We've been doing this work. We've been a part of it. So hello world, welcome, we're here. And we've also been centering and having anti-Black conversations. Last year, we partnered with the Transgender District and other Black leaders in the community to talk about anti-Blackness and anti-Black sentiments within the government and within movement building. We've been doing this work for a really long time. I've only been here for a year, but my work speaks for itself. And as COVID-19, started HRC back in 2014, we actually supported a lot of the Black trans and Latinx trans work through a needs assessment that was able to get $1.5 million to those specific organizations. And HRC has always partnered with community-based partners to make sure that their leadership and their work is done. So when COVID happened, HRC made sure that we funded, TGIJP Justice, who are working with formerly incarcerated and incarcerated trans women of color to make sure that those folks have housing, stable housing, supportive housing. COVID didn't really change anything. It just made everything worse. All these things of, disproportionate homelessness among trans and GNC folks was already there, So I think that HRC is continuing to partner and work on those things. I've been centering and having a lot of community conversations around how to support funding for nonprofits, supporting the mental health and wellness of our diverse communities here in San Francisco. And our advisory committee still is committed, and our commission is still committed to doing this work. So HRC has been doing a lot of intersectional work. And I welcome folks to, meet with our organization and partner with us to continue to lead those work, because it's important to also recognize and notice too that I'm a Black cisgender man. I do have privilege and I work for government. We're here to partner with folks. We're not here to lead and, co-opt work. We're in community and we're in partnership. That's the important thing I want folks to know.
Okay. Well, I want to combine a couple of these questions and really talk about Black LGBTQ folks in the context of these larger demonstrations, these larger protests around violence against Black bodies, and how sometimes it leads to erasure or ignoring the death of our Black LGBTQ folks. One thing that a lot of folks are not talking about is Tony McDade, who was the Black transgender man who was killed in Florida, I believe the same week as George Floyd. He was definitely on May the 27th. And you see a lot of protests around George Floyd, and they'll mention Ahmaud Arbery and they'll mention Breonna Taylor. But what I've been seeing on the greater whole is that people are ignoring Tony McDade. And then you saw the last week, there was a video of where a group of cisgender men attacked Iana Dior, who was a young Black trans woman in Minneapolis in the center of the George Floyd protest. So can we talk a little bit about how there's never really as much fervor or rage around Black LGBTQ, specifically Black trans death, as there is around Black cis het death, and also how dangerous it sometimes is for Black LGBTQ folks in these movements when there is rage. I want to start that conversation with Taquan. What do you see in regards to the way that we're treated both in death and when we're also standing with our cisgendered, our heterosexual brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I would say just being Black and queer sometimes is also like being invisible in both worlds. Being, invisible in the larger LGBTQIA plus movement, and then also being within the Black community sometimes. And that's not to say like everybody in the Black community or to demonize the Black community, because this happens in a lot of communities, not just the Black community. So I want to lead with that, and that there's work to be done in the Black community. But sometimes, yes, being queer, I am ignored. But I also have a lot of privilege to it being cisgender. But when it comes to our trans and gender nonconforming folks, there is a deafening silence that permeates within our, Black community throughout the world, which is, tiring, it's depressing, it's stressful, it's disempowering. And I think that we do need to do a better job as a community to uplift and center our Black trans and GNC folks in conversations around violence and state-sanctioned violence, as well as violence within our intercommunal violence, and then violence from just those just different nuanced things. So I think that there's a lot more work that we need to be done. And I think that it's really sad that we still have to, beat the drums and, talk to people about recognizing our livelihoods and our importance as people. So I think that there's a lot to work to do within the Black community as well as in the LGBT community to really center Black folks. And I'm happy that we've, been able to lead a lot of that talk and that conversation here in San Francisco.
All right. And Ari, I know that, you've posted a lot about, violence against Black trans women from Black folks. And I know that our good friend Ebony over in Sacramento, I believe this was a little bit after George Floyd, I believe, and was talking about the death of Nina Pop and how there wasn't as much rage around that. So, what are your feelings around the ignoring of Black LGBTQ folks, specifically Black trans death, and also the violence that we sometimes face within the movement?
Oh, yeah, I think a huge part of it is when we are murdered as trans people, people find a way to mentally justify why we are being murdered or why we're being attacked. So even with the situation with Iana Dior, folks are having a conversation around that video where 12, 15 cisgender grown men were beating on this girl, obviously trying to kill her, right? Because the fighting didn't stop. The only reason she still survived is because the corner store owner let her come into the back and told everyone to get out, right? I think what's important to know is that there is a way in which people are very much attracted to marginalizing and justifying violence against trans people as if we are doing something wrong. We've seen this it correlates, part of why Black Lives Matter was birthed by Alicia Garza and Patrice and Opal is because there was a way in which when Black men were being murdered by the state, it was sanctioned, right? Because people were like, oh, well, they had a knife or they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. They look suspicious. They shouldn't have worn a hoodie. They shouldn't have done this. They shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have been jogging at the construction site. They shouldn't been there is always a defense. And I think that especially happens with Black trans people, especially when we're murdered by men. The idea is that we're tricking people, that we're deceiving, that we're lying, and all of these things, and that we brought it upon ourselves for existing. And I'm hoping that, that justice is brought for Tony McDade, who was murdered by police. I think there is a tendency in our world is still very patriarchal. And so when a man is murdered, right, no matter what, it's always going to have more sort of significance in media than it ever is if you're a woman or a trans person or gender nonconforming. And we're seeing that even in our own movement for Black Lives, where, Breonna Taylor was murdered in her own home. There was a Black woman that was murdered in the ambulance, right? Unfortunately, those moments and those incidences don't bring us together the same way that when a cis Black man is murdered. And that's partly just because one of the origins of white supremacy is patriarchy, right? And so when we're dismantling white supremacy, we have to evaluate ways in which we're activated and we give value to different bodies as part of that. And I'll just, leave it there. Sorry, I'm about to go on and on.
No worries. So I want to go over to Imani and ask, a lot of this, as Aria mentioned, rests on, of course, as most things with white supremacy. And, we as a country have not really acknowledged the original sin of slavery. So what do you think would it take for us to finally fully acknowledge that original sin, but also make reparations for it? What would it take, and what does that actually look like, especially for Black queer people?
Sure. It's one of those things we've never seen it done before, but I think a lot of us have put some thought into this. And when I think when a lot of people hear reparations, what they immediately go to is that, oh, this isn't fair, that things are okay, but they're ignoring the fact that there are repercussions. Slavery happened, but there are things that have followed that. I was talking to someone yesterday about the GI Bill, the ways that some of our policies were instituted. So racism is built into the fabric of our institutions. And so the people that were able to benefit from slavery have continued to be able to benefit through generations in ways that Black people and people of color just haven't been able to do that. And this would make it possible to even the playing field for folks. Because when we think about what institutional institutional racism and how that has made it more difficult for Black people to develop generational wealth, and how we've seen that play out in having negative health outcomes and not having economic security and not having resource allocations in our neighborhood, not being able to own property and then develop equity in the homes that we own. These are all things that are a direct result of the way that our racist institutions have been instituted, but that continue to build on each other. And so reparations don't come out of nowhere. This is because, and it's important to look at, we're talking about systems here, because I think immediately what people point to are individual Black folks that are doing okay. And we have to look at this in a different way, because when we look at Black folks as a group, we know that we are disproportionately and negatively impacted by every system that we have. And so reparations would be a way to even the playing field, because right now, it's just too difficult. It's difficult for Black people. It's unfair for Black people, and we see that playing out.
Okay, well, I want to stick with you here with this, then, Imani. What are the key policy, cultural, and behavioral shifts that you want to see happen in this moment? I mean, we have, the whole world, all 50 states is now protesting, plus London and some other countries. What are some of the key policy and cultural behavioral shifts that we should be looking for to start evening the playing field?
Sure. So, right now, this just like what we have right now just isn't working. And that's what we need to move for. There's talk about defunding police. We see that when any other institution doesn't work, that we do put an end to that. And that's something we need to think about. How are we taking care of our communities? Because there have been many, many instances where our communities have been able to take care of ourselves without this institution of policing. And I want to talk about that again. We're not talking about individual police officers. We're talking about an entire system of policing that includes incarceration that is disproportionately impacting Black and brown folks, LGBTQ folks, low income folks, all of these things together. And so we need to do something so that we're leveling the playing field for folks, but also just making access to resources more accessible to the people that need them the most. And that can look a lot of ways. I love seeing that we are looking at protesting, what that looks like, organizing in sort of a larger context that is often able to include more people. But also, seeing from our leaders, seeing what it looks like to have leaders like our mayor show up and during a time like this, we haven't always had support of our leaders, and we're seeing some of that now. And so I feel really hopeful that that's something that we'll see something that's changed. But lastly, I also want to say, we want to see what happens next. We want to make sure that the next thing that happens is actually getting us closer to liberation. It is imperative that the result of this is going to end in seeing fewer Black and brown people being killed at the hands of the people that are sworn to protect us, that we will see fewer people being incarcerated and wrapped up in systems that are Black and brown folks and LGBTQ folks, that this actually has to get us to a better place. We don't want to see the same things that we've always had, where we have someone as a liaison, where we have someone speaking on behalf of something. We want to actually see systems change, not pinpointing one individual person about how their life is better.
Well, Aria, Imani brought it up, and we talked about it yesterday. Imani brought up the defund the police. So what are some key policy and cultural behavior shifts that you would like to see? Policy, behavior shifts. What do you think is going to be or needed to come out of this moment that we're in right now to actually start seeing equity and access change?
Sure. So Carolyn's referencing yesterday, we were on the Commonwealth Club, and I said that Mayor Breed does need to work towards defunding police. I got an update last night that she did tweet that she is working in partnership with Supervisor Shaman Walton on legislation that will move funding, some funding from the San Francisco Police Department to African American community-based organizations and alternative forms of restorative justice in our own communities, which I think is amazing. I think it's incremental. I think that there's obviously can still more be done. More can be done, but yes, I think that is a step in the right direction, especially in San Francisco. I think in context of movement, what can be done around the world, obviously supporting Black trans-led efforts in the queer community. We're celebrating Pride and we make this reference quite often, but I wanna make it very plain. The reason why many of you tuning in have the liberty and freedom that you do is because of the labor of Black trans people and Black queer people. It was Black queer and trans people who led the riots at Stonewall, who led the riots at Cooper's Donuts, riots in LA. We have always been a part of the fabric for the movement for Black lives long before there was a term for it, because our experiences being Black and trans or queer and woman or male compounded, right? And so that's how we see the world. And I think oftentimes in the queer community, we glamorize rioting. And then we are heavily critical when Black folks are rioting right now. The reality is a riot is a riot, and riots have been a huge reason why we are able to celebrate Pride. I think that should be acknowledged. And I think for those celebrating Pride going forward, we have to center Black, queer, and trans people until we are no longer the most impacted, and stop erasing us. This is also something that has been very consistent. We are consistently erased from our labor, from our place and space in these rooms, and we are often not allowed to be in these spaces even today, and we have to stop it. We have to move past this. We're not playing Oppression Olympics. When we say that Black Lives Matter and we say, elevate the voices of Black trans women, the idea is that if you elevate the most impacted people, then everyone will benefit from that liberation, because we are the most impacted. It's not a contest. So when I'm met with resistance from other people of color who are not Black, it is inhibiting the work that we can be doing in coalition with each other. That's my piece.
Former San Francisco Pride board member Anita says, when you solve it for Black people, you solve it for everybody. And I would go one step further. When you solve it for Black, queer, and trans people, you solve it literally for everybody. Taquan, I want to give you the last opportunity. What are some of the key cultural and policy shifts that you think that we would need to see coming out of this moment to increase equity and access?
Yeah, I just want to lean into kind of what's been going on in San Francisco. I think that my directors, Cheryl Davis and Shaman Walton, have been doing a lot of community roundtable work, specifically for the Bayview communities, for Sunnydale, for the Tenderloin community, for the Western Addition, Fillmore, for the OMI. I want to center a lot of the work that they've been doing, specifically for like Black and over-policed communities historically. I know Shaman Walton is working on a potential policy platform around police misconduct and hiring of police folks. I think there needs to be some work also around biased 311 calls. Those have been, that's been a huge issue within the Bay Area. In particular, I know Barbecue Becky, there's been other instances and occurrences throughout the country that we need to speak to. Defunding the police, of course. And I think that there also just needs to be a radical re-envisioning of what like policing is going to look like for each community, and how can we give sovereignty and autonomy to those communities to police themselves, and not even police themselves, to be safe and to be well and to be, together in community. I think that those are like a key platforms. And then also just like for the general movement, I think that supporting and, funding Black Lives Matter, Black-led organization and efforts that are against anti-Blackness, anti-racism, against over-policing and police abuse and police brutality. I think that there also needs to be a lot of training and education done for a lot of our just staff and folks within the city and county of San Francisco.
Okay. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us on this very important panel. You know, we wanted to make sure that we were hearing the voice of Black LGBTQ folks. You know, I want to make sure that in this moment, Black LGBTQ folks are seen, are heard, and it's really our job to do that because we won't always get that in a lot of these larger movement spaces. So I want to thank you, Imani. Thank you, Taquan. Thank you, Aria. We as an organization are going to continue to do our best to amplify a lot of these organizations. So you can actually go to sfpride.org. I've issued a resource list of Black, queer, and trans organizations where you can donate. For all you non-Black and white folks, I've listed a resource list of anti-racist books and Google Drives and all the things, so we can start really doing the work of breaking down this white supremacy and anti-Black racism within our community and within the larger community. So once again, thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carolyn. That was such an incredible panel, and thank you all so much for joining us. As you mentioned, I really think it's important, you know, as a white person that we take accountability and have our own conversations with community and other white allies to really do the work. And as you said, really look at how we're funding and supporting Black-led organizations. So please check out the Transgender Cultural District website, as well as the organizations that Carolyn mentioned. Now it's my honor to so we're also going to be doing this really special recognition of our healthcare workers who have been doing such incredible work on the front lines to keep our community safe during COVID. We know that as we move through this new time, you know, it might feel like we can just go out and go back to usual, but, you know, we need to make sure that we're continuing to wear our mask and be mindful, especially for those healthcare workers that are doing the work. So now it's my pleasure to introduce the Gay Men's Chorus. Thank you.
You with the sad eyes, don't be discouraged. Oh, I realize it's hard to take courage in a world full of people. You can lose sight of it all. The darkness inside you makes you feel so small.
You can be amazing, you can turn a phrase into a weapon or a drug. You could be the outcast or be the backlash of somebody's lack of love. But I wonder what could happen. I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show.
What you
Welcome back. Thank you so much. And now it's our honor to welcome Senator Scott Wiener to our Pride at Home special. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for
Well-
having me. And thanks for everyone who has made this virtual Pride celebration a reality. And we have a saying in the Jewish faith, we say next year in Jerusalem. And I will say now next year in City Hall, because we will get past this pandemic and we will be able to celebrate Pride together. And I look forward to that. But in a way, what we've learned from this new temporary digital world we're living in is, even though we're more distant in a lot of ways, it has allowed so many more people to participate. People who physically aren't going to go to an event or whatever can now still participate. So it's an interesting dynamic where I'm hoping that as we come out of this, we have even more people who are engaged in our community and who will stay engaged, even though we'll be back in the physical plane. So saying Happy Pride now is a little bit loaded. This year has not been the happiest of years, given the pandemic and the health and economic catastrophe that it's created, and the disproportionate impact on low-income people and communities of color. And then, of course, the mass mobilizations and protests that are so important in responding to police violence. But beyond police violence, it's a broken criminal justice system, a racist criminal justice system. So these are not happy times, but they are going to be productive times, because we will come out of this stronger. And what we are seeing in our community now and in the world is a spotlight, a very bright spotlight on inequities and injustices that have been with us for a very, very long time. Health inequities, health disparities are not new. Denial of access to healthcare is not new. African American people going to the hospital and being treated less seriously in some instances than white people, that's not new. It's not new that that people are being, particularly our Black community is being mistreated and killed by the police. It's not new that we have mass incarceration that's tearing apart communities. None of these things are new, but the pandemic and the George Floyd murder have allowed massive spotlights to be cast on these longstanding inequities. And as we protest and organize, what we need to make sure is that as we come out of this difficult period, that we come out as a better society, because we have the power to do that. And that's really what Pride is about this year. Yes, we need to come together and celebrate the progress that we have made as an LGBTQ community, but understanding that so many are being left behind. And remembering, and we've all been, many of us have been guilty of this. We celebrate every year in Pride, but we don't emphasize enough that Pride grew from protests and riots, from Stonewall and Compton's Cafeteria and the Black Cat. And Pride began as a protest, and we're getting back to our roots, and that's important. We're going to continue our work in the legislature. We've passed some aggressive police reform measures. We're going to continue in that direction. We are working hard to pass this year legislation to ensure that trans people who are incarcerated can be housed according to their gender identity and not forcibly housed according to their birth gender, which can be so dangerous, particularly for many trans women. We're going to work to make sure that queer people don't get shoved onto the sex offender registry for having consensual sex, which is happening in California today. And we're going to continue our work to reduce to end mass incarceration by shortening sentences, by having more alternatives to incarceration, and by focusing on root causes like mental health and addiction. So we have a lot of work to do in the community here in San Francisco, and a lot of work in Sacramento. It is such an honor to represent this community in the California State Senate. Thank you for that honor. I take it seriously, and it is such a public trust that I feel every minute of every day. And I look forward to the work ahead, and we're going to make some change. Happy Pride, everyone.
Thanks so much, Scott. We're so glad you can join us. Just in quick closing, if you could share what gives you hope this season moving forward with what we've all been moving forward through. Great. Well, thank you all so much. And now we're moving forward in our program. Carolyn, um, anything you want to add just in terms of kind of where we're at in this moment and how Pride's planning to be different this year?
I think where we are in this moment is partially what we're doing right now, making sure that we're amplifying our Black LGBTQ community. And, there's some things that we're trying to work on as San Francisco Pride as to how we can be a part of pushing forward for this change. So I encourage everyone to continue to watch our social media, watch our website, and we're good. Every little bit of information that we have as far as what we're doing as an organization, we're going to share with you as quickly as we can so you can join in and work with us in that.
Great. Well, and speaking of Pride and the LGBT community, we have our only out gay supervisor, Supervisor Raphael Mandelman, with us, representing District 8. Welcome, Supervisor.
Hi, Claire. Hi, Carolyn.
Hi, wait, let me go get my rainbow mask too.
Right? I just wanted to remind everybody, as you're out this weekend, wear your masks, everybody.
Yes, I ordered mine. It's still being delivered, the rainbow mask for Pride, but great tip. So we were just hoping you could share, what are you hoping, or what is your hopes for how people celebrate or recognize Pride this year? And what is some of the work that you're doing to support communities during this really difficult time?
Well, I do think that marching for justice is a great way to celebrate Pride. And I want everyone to wear their masks and stay 6 feet apart. But doing all of those things, the best way to celebrate Pride is to honor the spirit of all those who've gone before us and try to make this a more perfect union. This is a very bittersweet Pride. As the Senator talked about, we are months into a pandemic that has claimed the lives of more than 100,000 Americans. We have a disproportionately people of color. I think we have seen all of the inequities and problems that have been lingering in our society coming to the fore through that pandemic. And then most recently, the murder of George Floyd has reminded us of the countless murders of so many people of color over centuries that continues unabated to this day. So it's hard to be super happy with all of that, but I and I'm being told that I need to wrap up. But I do think it is sweet that there has been this collective rising up of Americans of all views, of all orientations, and of all genders across this country, rising up and demanding our country back. There's an election this year. We can make change. We can make things better. Harvey Milk said, said that we had to give folks hope. The way to give folks hope is for all of us to come together, take back our country, and be a more just place. So we will have a happy Pride next year if we do the work now.
Thank you so much, Supervisor. We're so glad that you could join us, and we look forward to the work that you're going to continue to do for our city. So thank you so much. Now it's my honor to introduce our next panel, really focused on the direct response to LGBT COVID relief. And this work has been led through the SF Bay Area LGBT Coalition, working to provide food, rental subsidies, and tons of additional resources. So please go to Bay Area LGBTQ COVIDrelief.com to learn more and get access to community resources. Now I'm going to kick it over to Michelle Meow from the Michelle Meow Show and the Commonwealth Club for a great panel to talk about some of the work that local community is doing to give back. To you, Michelle.
Now, the host of the Michelle Meow Show here for the Commonwealth Club. The program is your A through Z, covering the LGBT, LMNOP, and everyone in between. I'm also a member of the Board of Governors for the Commonwealth Club of California. Our program tonight is a special conversation around the San Francisco Bay Area COVID-19 Relief Fund, in which a coalition of leaders and nonprofit organizations have come together to provide relief for our most vulnerable and marginalized communities. And so I'm proud to introduce to you some incredible people who are part of our community, such as Claire Farley, who is with the Office of Transgender Initiatives, Anjali Rimi with Parivar Bay Area, Akira Jackson of Taja's Coalition, Nicole Santa Maria from Ala Para Trans Latinas, and Jack Beck of Turnout. Welcome everyone to the program. Rimi, your thoughts also on the question as being a leader with Parivar, the San Francisco Bay Area, and making sure that all voices, come together for this. All folks, are represented.
Yes, thank you again for having us, Michelle. I think it only intensified and magnified the marginalization that happens, and particularly to people of color, and particularly to trans, GNC, intersex folks. So that's the silver lining is it brought us together in a way, in a boundaryless world, Zoom or however, for us to come together. So the coalition is a seed from that vision that we can come together and build together and center our efforts around those that are left within the margins and be led by those that are usually on the margins. So that is how the coalition has been able to stay effective and successful. I think COVID as a whole has created a lot more disparity for the LGBTQ community at large. There is many instances where, from an operation standpoint, whether it's free food or fund allocation, the LGBTQ community has been a namesake and has been getting the bits and pieces. And our funding has been cut and asked to go to general resources, which could be a part of our intersection. For example, API folks are asked to go to a particular center that supports API folks, but that doesn't mean that trans API folks feel comfortable and can access those. Same with trans Latinx folks. So I think there's been that diametrically opposite dynamics at play, but I think at large, it has also brought us back together, whether it's this coalition or the artist coalition or the various things that happen. And this right here, we're coming together to show the greater world that if there's one community that can get past it, that's us.
Anyone from our panel would like to add to that? Jack?
From our perspective, we've really had a front row seat to seeing how people in the queer community have really stepped up to meet this challenge. And it has been so inspiring to see people coming from all parts of the queer community to really step up and support those who are most vulnerable. We have seen people not only volunteering, but, financial support was really slow moving at the beginning. So a lot of people who were volunteering to deliver food and deliver medicine, they also stepped up to pay for those resources themselves out of their own pockets. So it's really been inspiring to see the queer community step up again after a long history of stepping up to create nonprofits to care for our most vulnerable when we're hit in an epidemic or hit through systemic injustice. So it's been really inspiring to see that happen with COVID-19 as well.
Nicole and Akira, would love to also hear from you specifically how COVID-19 has impacted our communities and some views. We'll start with Nicole.
Well, I'm going to echo what my other colleagues and partners have been said. But one of the things that I really believe that it's very important to mention that we are trying to focus in not othering our communities, because it is very important to perceive and being with our feet in the ground that we are also that community, that we are part of the community that we are serving. So in that sense, the way that for example, as a Latinx member that I belong and now that I have the opportunity to serve in this position that I am now, it is also the story, my own story as well, reflecting in or mirroring the life experience of my other trans folks, trans sisters, intersex communities. So undocumented community in right now in this process in COVID-19 has been very challenging for us. So that's a very huge impact, because there are many different ways that people cannot access to the resources that we are trying to serve. So, for example, and it is for me, COVID-19, one of the things that the impact has brought to us, it is a denounce of our marginalization, a visibilization of on the situations on underserved our communities we are involved, but also it's an announce. It's an announce that how we can come together and how we can position ourselves and bring, as you mentioned before, the voices of us. For me right now, my pronouns are not she, her, hers anymore. For me, my pronouns are we, our, ours. So in that sense, I would like to highlight this new opportunity and this announce or this denounce as well of the COVID-19, because we are seeing people who are not Latinx community who are not having access to, for example, the funds to rent, for example, because they don't have documents. And many of our grants and many of our funds are very restricted in, for example, W-9s, and not everybody in our community, especially in undocumented Latinx community, it is having a paper to fill a W-9 form. So continue the challenging of being all the intersectionalities or all the identities that we embrace as community. It is important for me to highlight and to mention that this is a challenge that since Stonewall, we have continued seeing where Black and Latina trans women were leading this effort, this community effort, and we are still, the Black and Latinx community is still in the margins and is still navigating these challenges and these issues. So yeah, has been based in other voices, but those other voices, we are the mirror of them. So we are those voices that we are trying to uplift it, to come together really and try to create a better response of all the challenges that life can bring us, brought us in this opportunity.
Sure.
I thank the panels for introducing their perspective and as well as bringing this coalition together. For me, it's COVID-19 is just a reset button. Oftentimes, especially in research, we prioritize like the least likely marginalized population first. And at this point, like we have trans leadership, we have trans women that are leading, we have trans men that are leading, and we're more visible right now. I believe this is like a call to action for us that has the capacity and has the skill sets and has a connection with the community, that is a part of the community, to step up and advocate for our community. I've been hearing this thing about COVID-19 is like the new HIV. A lot of HIV services has been tailored to include the onset of COVID-19 and subsequent issues that we're facing and which continues to marginalize us inside of our research program. So I'm just, at this point, it's like this is an opportunity that we have to step up and to be these leaders and advocate for our community. And, now we don't have to have a framework that was adapted from some other community that we fight and talk about that's not representation of us. So,
yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And these are the types of conversations and points that we could bring up, right, that are specific to our community. We'll start with Claire, because I brought up San Francisco and I brought up, that sometimes leaders can do a little more, and we have to for our communities.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great point and really speaks to what, the panel has been sharing In San Francisco, we invest more than any other city into our trans and LGBT programs. We're leading the effort in LGBT equality, but we always have more work to do. And, this coalition really came about because we saw that gap. We saw our LGBT seniors not being served. We saw many folks on the fringe that weren't accessing existing public services or benefits. And so we really looked at how can we have a regional approach, both in terms of advocacy on the state level, because most of the programs and organizations are not funded outside of these city dollars or these general fund grants. And so they don't have access to foundations or other funding that so many nonprofits are relying on. And so we really looked at calling on the governor to support housing services, employment, feeding efforts. And so when we think about how can we keep people sheltered and in place when they're living in an SRO and don't have access to a place to refrigerate their food, or they've been evicted and they're living on the streets. All these things were already happening. We know trans folks are, 3 times more likely than the general population to be unemployed, 6 times for trans women of color, 10 times more likely to be homeless in San Francisco. And so these were all the efforts we were working to fight. And that's what happened during the last recession. And I was in the middle of economic development work and I saw the impact of that recession. And so I think what everyone has shared is that this is the reality that folks experience every day. And we know that it's just going to double. And so using our voices to lift up that we have to have equity in the response, I think is so key, because a one size fits all doesn't work for everyone. And so that's where these innovative approaches from, our partnership with Open House and Mon Ami to deliver groceries and do virtual chats with seniors, to Jack's efforts to make sure that we get groceries delivered by volunteers, to Akira's work, of making sure that we get housing subsidies to trans folks that are potentially going to be evicted, to Remy's efforts around, okay, this needs to be a regional approach. We need to look at what are we doing as a Bay Area, not just reliant on what can San Francisco do. And then, obviously to Nicole's work with Ella to say, okay, CalFresh and all these other food benefit programs, the potential federal funds, those are not going to Latinx communities. So how are we making sure that when money does come in, whether it's through our coalition or through other efforts, how are we centering communities of color and Latinx folks to make sure that those resources go where they're needed?
And from the panel, please jump in and let's talk about that. I mean, I think it's so important for people to understand that it's not just another relief fund, that's put out there. It's because there are so many relief funds, but that every single opportunity where you're supporting a member of your community, the LGBTQI community, especially a fund like this. So anyone jump in? Remy?
I think there is something to be recognized about the bountiful of courage and movement and organizing that kind of springs from the San Francisco world and into the rest of the country and the rest of the world. But one of the key reasons that, Parivar and we kind of jumped into this is because we are outside of that. We are based in Oakland. And, the usual perception is that the SF Bay Area is covered by San Francisco. But one of my primary reasons to really spearhead this is to get that inspiration from San Francisco and kind of have other city agencies support us as the LGBT community and not prioritize us, if not, at least tag us to be getting the funds and the resources, which have traditionally been devoid of any of that. So I think that has to be recognized. And the other aspect of what we are going through and what the need for such a scale is because, as Nicole was touching on it, we, as the South Asian trans GNCI queer community, I'm fortunate to say that majority of the community is pretty okay. You know, they've been able to hang on to their jobs. And again, I'm not generalizing, but I'm saying the need that we saw was in the greater community. So we kind of marched towards the greater good of the greatest number of people. And, you know, the data as we look, and I keep using the word data, but I shouldn't generalize it that way. But as we've seen all the submissions and the comments, we've seen how difficult people have been getting through and still staying resilient and still saying, yeah, I've lost my job, but still I'm taking care of my kids and things like that. So I think one thing really, really to highlight and recognize is this coalition came together to address not only the economic poverty that people are getting pushed into, but also the emotional poverty to say and to show that you're not alone. And God knows that we are already so isolated, you know, and this takes it to a different level. But this coalition also had that spirit to say, you're not ethereally isolated. We are working together and trying to get what we can in balancing the reality of the world where everybody is trying to go for the same pot of gold to say, actually, this is what we got and this is what we're going to share, you know, and we might not be filling our stomachs fully, but at least we can share and have a few morsels.
I want to chime in on that, especially like having a conversation with Nicole. Like we talk, and just like this year, like last year, we just launched Our Trans Home, and you know, when I hear like rumors or things that like, you know, people are thinking about like deficits and you know, trying to cut back stuff. I often wonder like if this is something that is, you know, could be like cut, like, is this something that's in jeopardy? Like how is the city or how are grantors or how are funders looking at that? And just judging from the fact that we are already marginalized and this is like a big feat, like literally it was like a big victory for us. So my thing is that I'm worried about those things as well as that because of COVID and the fact that everyone comes along on different parts of their journey, rather if they're like receiving Social Security benefits or rather if they're like depending on these organizations to open and stay open so they can actually get like a $50 stipend or $50 gift certificate to go get some groceries or whatever. So these are things that I'm worried about as well as like growing. We talk a lot about like expansion, but to me, it's just like growth and expansion are like two different things. Like, are we growing organically as a community? Are we coming together and we have these resources? Are we sharing these resources? It just, at this point, it makes me wonder, like, do we have to like, we're fighting to just maintain what we already have. And it's not a lot of growth.
The thing is that, for example, I echo the words of Jack in the sense of how the revenues, how challenging it is already, the pandemic impacting our organization, and specifically the only trans Latinx-led organization in San Francisco and the Bay Area in general it's really huge, you know, especially because this is the first time that a trans person is leading this organization. It is, in my case, it is the first time experience as being an ED. I'm an art therapist, so I've been doing therapy my entire professional life. So coming here to this space that had already challenges in for example, in the funds related, you know, and now a pandemic, how does impact an organization that it's actually is still under fiscal sponsorship, you know? So because we don't have the amount that we need to have in order to be independent. So our organization, it is still under a fiscal sponsor. And we are also struggling to continue see how we are going to continue providing the services that we have been doing for 26 years not being Ella, 14 years being as Ella, because Ella already lost the funds when it was a part of a project. So that's very difficult to sustain. And one of the other things that I've been noticing and also worries me in this situation that, yeah, it is important to recognize the work that we are doing and we have been doing, but not romanticize our resiliency in this time of pandemic, because the organizations do the work based on the grants and the funds that we get. And it is very important to think, and that's why I'm saying that this pandemic is a denounce, but also it's an announce of new opportunities of some needs that we need to talk and put on the table. So we have to talk about undocumented people who are in prisons, people who are sex workers, that it is very challenging if the organization, for example, like Akira, Taya's Coalition, and Ella para Translatina, that we are serving people who are really invisible. So, but if we lost funds and we have these cuttings in our funds that they are already happening, so I'm thinking how is going to be this new challenge. The thing that Ella para Translatina also joined this coalition, it is because we are all, I'm aware of our capacities, and I think that joining capacities, it is also the thing that is actually giving results as better as we can do in this moment that is a global emergency, but also it is coming to the reality how our organization, that's the denounce, how our organizations has been functioning until today, and how they can preserve after this pandemic with the grants or the funds cuttings and etc. So I dream that after COVID, we can actually not only thrive, but flourished after this, because we, at least as an intersex, transsexual woman, that it is an asylum seeker, because I don't even have the status as other people. So it is not only coming to, oh yeah, we are a resilient community. Yes, we are. And yes, we are. But we need support and we need to come together as community. We need also to uplift our voices to the city and all the people who are given the funds, because right now it is like, yes, these funds are for COVID relief. But what happened with the sustainability of the organizations? So what happened with the people who are doing the work for the community? Who is going to do the job or the work directly to or serve our communities if the programs are closing or they just get unfunded, Mm-hmm. So those are the questions that I'm having, and that's something that COVID brought to me.
Yeah. I mean, talk about how we did things before, how we'll do things differently now during this pandemic. The coalition strategy, that was something that I thought was such a great idea. I mean, how else are we going to be able to serve as many people as possible in our community, and especially, folks who really need it? And we've been talking for so long in the movement how we need to do a sincere reprioritization of the voices of who we serve in our community. And so if maybe, Remy, you want to talk about the coalition itself?
I think the coalition was aimed to serve everybody in the LGBTQ community. We had different, focuses, starting with the San Francisco Bay Area and the rest of the Bay Area. California, not Bay Area. We said then not California, America, not America, the world. And we want to help everybody. And, personally, my vision is this can show, and being, one of the new novices into leading and organizing with such amazing leaders, I will say that this should give us a good sense of how we can work together. And so the sustainability and the life of this coalition needs to continue. And I fully see it continuing. Hopefully, we don't have to call it a COVID coalition, but it's a coalition of the San Francisco Bay Area LGBTQ community that continues. And so we have always operated from that and also kind of laid down our guiding principles, where even within our community, we have to emerge beyond cisness, we have to emerge beyond whiteness, and we all recognize that. But when we are all fighting in our little wells, in our little pigeonholes, it's impossible to kind of put everybody together and say, okay, in this great grandeur world, these are the folks that need help, and it shouldn't matter where those funds are coming from or which organization are they affiliated or considered home communities of. So I think we started with that approach, and obviously there's the whole feasibility aspect of getting the funds and raising those funds. And again, each organization, as Nicole said, is also trying to sustain and operate besides trying to support the community, right? So we kind of juxtaposed both of those and kind of came up with kind of a framework to say that we will still prioritize trans GNCI folks and kind of take our prioritization of what funds are available. And so as we started seeing the submissions, every submission is equally important, and that's how we've looked at it. We received over 270 submissions in total, not including all the streams of inputs that Jack, Sternout, and Monami and many folks created. And we kind of decided to spread the wealth rather than not, and support in different rounds and waves. So we are starting with round one, which is focusing on trans GNCI folks. And really, there is no criteria. We are not looking to verify what their income status is and such. We have a little bit of a stipulation, given that most of the funds are coming from the city of San Francisco, which we're very grateful for, to kind of verify location and such. But as such, we don't want to go down that path where it is accessibility and awareness, which is one of our other guiding principles, is lost. And then another aspect is the individual interest. We have to understand that, again, I might want to still say we're in kind of a bubble in San Francisco, but there are folks that are isolated even in the Bay, and there are folks that don't have any affiliation with any organization given their own trans journeys, or given their need to be whoever they are and however they need to be. So our focus has also been individual.
I want to echo what Rimi said. I think this coalition approach has been really incredible, and it's created a lot of opportunities that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. There's more than 20 organizations that are a part of this coalition, and each of them has deep roots in the community, has a way to interface with folks who are most vulnerable and to channel those needs to the coalition. And then we can pool our resources, share our respective expertise and resources to make sure that people get what they need through the coalition. So that's really been an incredible thing to be a part of. Regarding the fundraising, as Rimi mentioned, there's been some incredible support from the city of San Francisco, but those are not the only folks that we're getting requests from. So we've been doing our best to raise additional funds so that we can support folks in the East Bay, other folks who are outside of San Francisco. And we've been doing that in a couple of different ways. One, we've been reaching out to our corporate partners. A lot of the nonprofits in the coalition have worked with different companies at different times to see if they are able to provide any support. And we have heard back, and we've gotten some support from a couple of different companies and corporate ERG groups, which has been really interesting. A lot of companies have been hit really hard by this too. Companies that are either in hiring freezes or layoffs, and the traditional funds that they have available to support nonprofits are locked up. So that's its own challenge. But we also created a COVID-19 registry for LGBTQ folks that are submitting needs through the needs form for the coalition. And so we're pulling out individual items that people need and putting them into a registry, almost like a wedding registry. So if someone needs hormone replacement therapy, or if they need clean needles, or if they need shoes or a feeding tube, people can go to the registry, see how much that costs, and then make a donation to the registry, and we can support that as well. And that's been a really effective way to engage folks who want to support this cause. We've actually had all of the hormone replacement therapy that's been requested has been funded, which is so nice to be able to say.
I want to add to that. I love the registry, and I can't wait to end the program. I can't believe I'm saying that, but just because I want to go and support the fund. That is just, I think, talk about making sure that, some of the direct services of support stay alive. What a great idea.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, kind of echo what Jack and Remy shared, is that, as we come into Pride, really join a lot of other voices that are calling on organizations and corporate organizations that typically spend, thousands of dollars or more into floats or parades, to really look at how are you giving back to LGBT organizations or COVID relief efforts. Because we know people are giving in big amounts. Go to the website. We've been fortunate enough, San Francisco's Give to SF Fund is supporting $75,000 in food relief. Remy and Jack have raised an additional $15,000 to $20,000 through foundations. Akira is supporting housing relief. So we're doing the work. But if you look at the millions and millions of dollars that are going to other relief efforts, we really need people to step up.
Great point. Great point. And the website is Bay Area LGBTQ COVIDrelief.com, and our distribution partners, for sure. As we're winding down on time, and it's a question for all of you, and that is, I heard a couple of you say it, and it's not just about this pandemic or just about this specific time, that this could be an absolute reset for us and our future in ensuring that we create sustainable models to support every one of us in the LGBTQ community. And so would love to hear your final thoughts on, as we look to the future of whatever that might be, the LGBTQI future, and we look at our community as a whole, how we all get through this pandemic. But what do you envision, right? Like we are able to help each other. We're all able to pitch in and help one another be healthy. But what do you envision in a future for the LGBTQ community once this is over? And I put that in air quotes because I know that this whole thing is going to change our lives, forever. I'll start. Yeah, go ahead, Akira.
Yeah. Okay, so in previous pandemics and epidemics, and it just seems like LGBTQI population has been ostracized in a way that it also, in some ways, have demonized us. So I'm just wondering, we talk about how our the institutions, our government, our providers, often when they create programs or create policies, that it sort of further pushes us in those margins. I'm wondering if us having, since we do have this visibility, if we can start with the framework of looking at the most marginalized populations first and then building out from there. So that's just my own thing. I'm just really curious. I'm just trying to see who's going to step up and do it. Of course, we are the ones that are leading, stepping up and doing this work. But in terms of certain types of city departments or just government departments that have us in there, as well as they are allies. How are they advocating for us? And and then also, what is the impact of their voices to these people that are saying that they want to include us? So
yeah, no, I love that. I've always wanted to say, well, how about we start with not marginalizing anyone? Well, how about in the next pandemic, all of us as a cushion or safety or a home or Nicole.
I'm gonna bring Claire's comment at the beginning that it was equity. I think that it is very important to consider or to have very present in our minds, but more than in our minds, in our hearts, where the conscious come from, in the general population, in the general community, it is not only consider LGBTQI community an issue just for the LGBTQI community, it's the general population that also I would like to see an awaken, people more aware and more compassion, and to be able to start healing journeys in our communities, because it is, for me, important to be aware that one of the things that have been happening as a result of COVID and the pandemic, and even way beyond before COVID, it is the need of our communities to heal from the eternal violence against us, against our communities. So, how this pandemic can bring up the humanity in all of us and see the holistic ways and the holistic responses that we can come together and see these common horizons where, as Akira was saying, that the most marginalized communities we all together can lift them up, or can lift us up, in order to prevent violence, prevent all these issues that are included and are more visible with this pandemic and this COVID. So it is a huge journey, and it is a huge challenge. But I think that we are, the people who are here and many people who are going to see this show, are sharing this horizon, are sharing this dream that we can come to more equity societies where all lives are included, where all words can fit in one world, and we can come together, not to have like in an internal responses of crisis, because in our communities we are always in a crisis. So how we can change that reality that put us in major risks and in outside of the view of everybody, because we are always continue otherizing people, to othering people, and like, oh yeah, I'm not there, I'm not that. And even in our own community, that this is an opportunity to check out our own selves, to see the things that we need to change as well in us, but also as a community. This pandemic has changed already everything. So we also need to change within to make the possibility that the broader community can also start this collective change.
Thank you, Nicole. Remy, you have the final word on final thoughts.
Thank you all for being here. I do want to make sure that we recognize and thank Horizons Foundation, San Francisco Foundation, and PRISM Foundation, formerly GAPA Foundation, for supporting us by granting us funds that we can directly give back to the community, and individuals who can donate and who have donated on our GoFundMe page, and the corporate sponsors that Jack touched on. I think it's important to bring that up because I see us being able to really start looking at nonprofit world in a more practical way. Ultimately, it comes down to being able to pay the bills, have a roof over your head, and be able to have food to eat. So yes, we have struggled for many, many years and decades, but this really brings out that we have to somewhat operationalize how we survive when we are marginalized. Of course, we don't want to be marginalized. I think to Jack's point, the world is in grief. Everybody is going through that. So my sincere hope and what I have seen is that people in general are operating from a sense of gratefulness and empathy. And I'm definitely seeing that in the community, where someone who cannot afford to live, like are homeless actually and are finding a place to stay in a hotel are actually Facebook posting saying, hey, I've got another bed in this room. Does anybody else want to come sleep? That is the level of passion and care that we will see in this world, especially in our LGBTQ community. We need $90,000 more to support everybody's need. And we had initially started with a vision of giving out at least $500 to everybody who reached out. At this time, we're having to cap to $200. So I do hope in the near future that we will get those $90,000. And, you know, the other thing I want to say is we need folks like Claire in city agencies to say, guess what? I'm at the table. I don't need somebody to talk about me. I need the funds. That $75,000 that Claire secured really took us to the next level to be able to really say to the community, yes, we are here to support you. And then the aspect around that is resilience building, sustainability, but then truly holding allyship accountability, whether that's cis folks in the LGBTQ community, white folks, but towards Black, brown, trans bodies, or whether it's the greater world towards the LGBTQ community, this is the time for folks to emerge and show allyship. And it's not necessarily on call, complimentary, but it's almost required to share the wealth you have. And finally, I'll say this, as an immigrant, a stranger from a different world and who just became an American, I believe in individualism. This country is based on that. And every individual has the right to live the way they want to, with or without COVID. And it's each one of our responsibility to do that. And I sincerely hope that us being at home, loving ourselves, and really having self-preservation to the next level, we are going to appreciate that individualism in another person and support in any way. And the first way you can do that is by donating to our GoFundMe, which will be posted.
Remy, thank you so much. So let's come together and let's help raise the $90,000 plus on top of the $90,000. Go to Bay Area LGBTQCOVIDrelief.com. I'll be sure to meet you there. Definitely want to be there for.
Thanks so much, Michelle and the Commonwealth Club for that incredible panel. And we look forward to the work that continues to happen with that incredible coalition. Now it's my honor to welcome again Gay Men's Chorus.
If you hear this message, wherever you stand, I'm calling every woman, calling every man. We're the generation, we can't afford to wait. The future started yesterday, and we're already late. We've been looking for a song to sing, search for a melody, search for someone to lead. We've been looking for the world to change. If you feel the same, then go out and say if you're out there. Sing along with me if you're out there. I'm dying to believe that you're out there. Stand up and say it loud if you're out there. Tomorrow's starting now. No more broken promises, no more call to war. Unless it's love and peace that we're really fighting for. We can destroy hunger, we can conquer hate. Put down the arms and raise your voice. We're joining hands today. Oh, I was looking for a song to sing, search for a leader, but the leader was me. We were looking for the world to change. We can't be heroes, just go on and say if you're out there. Sing along with me if you're out there. I'm dying to believe
out there, are you out there? If you're out there and you're ready now, say it loud, scream it out there. Sing along with me if you're out there. I've got to believe you're out there. Stay up and sing it loud if you're out there. Tomorrow's starting now, now, now. If you're out, if you're out there.
Thank you so much for joining us for our special Pride Month kickoff, Pride at Home. Also, special thanks to our co-hosts, our crew, our panelists, our performers, and Mayor Breed for joining us. As a reminder, we encourage you to continue taking care of yourself and each other. Please donate and take action to stop violence against Black and brown bodies and Black trans women. You can visit us at sfpride.org. We do have a great list of organizations where you can donate to.
And also, we just want to remind everybody to stay healthy and safe and remember to wear your mask. And also remember to check out some of the additional community events at Manny's. They're currently working on some big projects, so make sure to follow them at Welcome to Manny's to stay informed. And also check out the Our Town SF Nonprofit Expo 2020 this August.
And I want to take this opportunity, Claire. You know, normally we're here at City Hall and we're able to bring out the whole Pride board so everyone can see them and give them love. But since they're not here, I want to make sure that I shout out our entire board. So our Vice President, Jake Little, our Secretary, Wynn Pham, our Treasurer, Suzanne Ford, Bruce Baudet, Nikki Kama, Elizabeth Lanyon, Kirby Lynch, Manuel Perez, Angeli Remy, and Amy Suyoshi. Thank you so much as a board for doing so much hard work for this entire year. We also want to make sure that you're supporting some of the amazing dance events that are going on prior to Pride. Please make sure that you check out Soul Lovely, which is a QTPOC space, which you can find at Soul Lovely on Facebook. Also, make sure you're supporting the amazing events at the Queer Nightlife Fund, including this weekend's Quarantine Dance. Visit SF Bay Area Queer Nightlife Fund to learn more. Oh, I left out Fred. Fred's gonna kill me. Thank you to our executive director, Fred, who is, as we speak, is watching and working so hard to put together an amazing virtual Pride event. Thank you, Fred Lopez.
Thank you all so much. Take care and show your pride. So great to host with you, Carolyn.
Oh, thank you, Claire. It was great to host with you. Happy Pride.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Thank you,
Bye.
Sam.
Thanks, everybody.